Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. I'm Marie Burch, your host. Join us as we discuss and unpack wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate law in a way that's actually informative, interesting, and, well, hopefully entertaining. Because if you don't have a will, the state of Texas has one for you. Let's dive in. Okay, so what's our topic today?
Celebrity wills.
Celebrity wills or lack thereof, or celebrity estates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we find that most celebrities die without a plan or an updated plan? Is that what your research has shown?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
Well,
yes.
hold on. Without updated, you earlier, whenever we were talking about it, you were like, well, there
Actually,
was
you're right.
some-
Yes.
Thank you. I'm always
Yes.
right.
I mean, the fact is that yes, even celebrities put this planning off, don't do it, don't have it. It is kind of shocking because, one of the many excuses, and I do mean excuses that people will make in not getting this done or putting it off, is that they don't have a lot, or they don't have this, or they don't have that. And when you have the same statistics around celebrities or wealthy people also not having a plan, then here we are. So there's something else at work, which is beyond the scope of this particular episode, but is the common thread to everything we do here at Burch Law, and that is trying to get people motivated to get this done and get it done now, because you never know when things can happen. So of course everybody's going to share a celebrity estate matter. And I was excited about this because I get to share my favorite. And I'm also rather proud that Mr. Elvis Presley did have an updated will and did have a plan in place. And that probably the state of Graceland and everything else would look a lot different. He didn't make some good business decisions, which is one reason why the estate doesn't have more. But it's part of what his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, got him into. And maybe they just didn't realize the royalties off of music that would be more lucrative. But anyway, be that as it may. And what was cool is that there used to be a time, and I'm glad that I got to be an Elvis fan during this era, because Elvis Presley Enterprises has completely bulldozed and bought out the chain of gift stores that used to be right next to Graceland that were not owned or managed by Elvis Presley Enterprises. So that's where you got the best stuff. The knockoff stuff. You get TCB soap that gave you a rash. Get velvet Elvis paintings. And to my great, great pleasure as an Elvis fan, estate planning attorney, I have a copy of Elvis's will. And it's in this very office. We used to keep it in the conference room, and luckily nobody stole it. But anyway, yes. So the story there is he did have a will in place, and he had one child, Lisa Marie Presley, who was underage at the time that he passed away. So everything went into trust for her to be managed by his father, Vernon. And at age 25, that is when it would all be Lisa's. Does this sound familiar to anybody? It's kind of the stuff
Somewhat,
we do.
yes.
Right?
We do.
So I'm actually covering the chain of events that led us to where we are, because there are 3 deaths that I am going to cover, all of them with updated estate plans, which I think one of the takeaways here is no matter how well planned or updated, is that it still can cause struggle, confusion, family fighting. So then Vernon, his dad, survived him, but died a few years later. And then through Vernon's will and some plans, that's where Priscilla was brought in to help co-manage the trust for Lisa. Now, Priscilla was Elvis's ex-wife, but they stayed close and in good I guess they maintained their relationship for the sake of Lisa and still had a lot of love for each other. It is Priscilla who was the one that opened Graceland to tours. And part of that was trying to manage this estate for Lisa, wanting it, and for the fans for it to be continued. But it was just a lot of expense because there was some mismanagement, great mismanagement of his funds. And he also gave away a lot of money, some of it formally to charity, but also to family, friends, and random strangers, and had no concept of how much all those things cost. And so there wasn't as much in the estate as you could have imagined then. So Priscilla was faced with this situation of, what do I do? This is a major American icon, if not worldwide figure. Wanted to preserve it for her daughter. And so the idea about opening Graceland to tours was born. And it is to this day. So where this was, when did it open for tours? So he died in 1977. I believe it opened in I should have looked this up, like 1980, 1982, like around that time was around the first time that it opened up for tours where people could actually visit the home. And it's funny to think about in hindsight, or for us who, I may be older than all of you, but I still wasn't alive during this era. That it seemed like a crazy idea and crazy risk. Like, are they going to be able to do anything? Are they going to have any success? And to this day, it is the second most visited home in the United States. Do you know what the first one is?
White House?
Sarah, where did you come from?
Total shot in the dark. I don't know.
Wow.
That's what I was going to.
Oh, Sam, that's what I was going to say.
I was going to say that, or like, I don't know if Dolly Parton's house is on.
Well, she has her amusement park in Pigeon
Yeah.
Forge, but her home isn't open to
Okay.
not yet. Not a bad guess. But yes, it is the second most visited house. And I could look up the stats, but hundreds of thousands of people tour there every year. They have huge festivals, Elvis Week in August, which I think one of the saddest parts of Elvis's story is that he died in August. And so that's when Elvis Week is around, and Memphis is a pretty miserable place to be in August. Like, if he could have just held on till like March or something, that'd be it is rough. I've been to, I'd have to count it, maybe 12 different Elvis weeks.
Dang.
And I've actually run into Priscilla and Lisa Marie during Elvis Week, and some of his band members, original band members. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, yeah, so Priscilla was the one who had this idea, and it was a huge success. And for those who may be interested in a little bit more of this, you can tour all of Graceland except the upstairs. Now, there's a lot of conspiracies, Sam. So are you like all excited about the fact there are conspiracies as to why the upstairs is not open? But the fact of the matter is there were still people living there.
Oh.
And come to find out, I didn't realize it to this extent, but even when when Lisa Marie was still alive, that they would go, and Riley, her oldest daughter, they would go, and if they woke up too late and the tours had started, they would stay up. They would stay upstairs the whole time until the tours were done. Is that crazy?
Like a long day.
Yeah,
because I think she says in like the book, right, that it like starts at 8 and ends at like 5.
Yeah,
so it's a long day.
It's like a work day.
Yeah.
And apparently from the book that Sam is listening to, narrated by Julia Roberts, but I'm reading with my own eyes, that they would have, like, workers would come and bring them food, like they'd go run and bring them up McDonald's or something like that to the upstairs. But it's also where he died. And if you've ever been there, it's not easy to get up and down the stairs. So, and the other thing, which is one of the more official explanations, is that Elvis was really big at having people. He was very proud of Graceland, bought it for his parents. I mean, this was like someone who was born dirt poor, was able to reach this level and be able to provide this for his family and his friends. The land itself is really big, but for a lot of people going there, it's not much of a mansion by today's standards. But I did look this up. It's over 17,000 square feet. So I do have to I do have to laugh at people are like, it's not really that big as a mansion. I'm like, well, that's still pretty big. There's a lot of hidden rooms that you don't tour, and it's also 3 levels because there's a basement. So I think it's harder to to conceptually feel how big the house itself is. Um, but then there's a lot of land and acreage there as well. But anyway, the official explanation they give is that Elvis loved hosting people and having people come, but that the upstairs was always a private place for him and his family. So that's, you can decide how much of a conspiracy there is to that he's still alive, he's still up there, whatever else. I'm sure Sam would be able to find even more nefarious things that people claim as to why you can't go up there. It's also where he is buried. It's where, not originally, he wasn't. His mom had died right before he went into the army. Well, he was in basic training when it happened. But where he was originally buried, I think it was Forest Lawn, not entirely sure. There were someone who attempted to steal his body. So they moved
Whoop.
his grave and his mom's grave to the meditation garden, which is out by the pool. And then it is also where Vernon was buried. And then his grandmother, Minnie Mae, also called Dodger. These were all names, by the way, we were considering for Poppy.
Minnie
But
Mae and Dodger.
she's buried there. And then there's a place marker for his stillborn twin. Did you know Elvis was a twin?
Yes.
Yes, his twin's name was Jesse Guerin, and he's Elvis Aaron. We talked about the middle name and spelling previously on an episode. And then his grandson took his life in 2020. So Lisa Marie's son, her only son. And so he's there. And then Lisa Marie sadly passed away last January, and she is there as well. Yes, I was at the funeral. Yes, we took a walk with everybody up and did a procession around to see it. It's actually the last time I was there. But Fergie, the Duchess of York, Axl Rose, Alanis Morissette, who's the lead singer of the Smashing Pumpkins? Billy Corgan.
Billy Corgan.
Austin Butler was there, but he didn't speak. But the rest of them either sang or spoke. I know I'm probably missing some people, but it's funny because my sister and I decided, we gotta be there. The fact that they invited all the fans to attend the funeral is like the most Elvis thing ever, if you really know like his story and what he was about. But I really thought when Graceland announced this that it was just something for the fans. And then we were there. It was freezing cold. So he was born in January. It's cold in January, so they can't move Elvis Week to around that time. And Elvis Week in August started organically with fans just gathering there. So there's really only, my point is, there's only a few months that are comfortable to be in Memphis, and January and August are not them. But anyway, it was freezing cold. We were waiting in the morning, and man, Graceland is just this well organized, oiled machine. And so we're waiting in line, and it finally opens. And as we get through the gates, they hand us these official programs, and they're beautiful. And I open them up, and I'm looking, and I see, the Justice of York, which who knew that they were good friends? I did not. Alanis Morissette, Axl Rose, Billy Corgan, and I'm looking, and I'm like, and they have this set up, and they have like where fans are going, and they have like where the family is, and then we see Priscilla. Priscilla was there, Jerry Schilling, who was one of Elvis's best friends, and I'm like, Julie, that's my sister. Julie, this is the funeral. This is the funeral. This isn't just something they're doing for fans. Like, this is the funeral. And it was amazing. It was really, really cool. I mean, it was very special that they did that. And the whole family was there. Lisa ended up having twin daughters with her last husband. It was number 4, last husband. And of course, Riley was there, who's the one that's kind of taken taken all of this on. But anyway, so that's my sidebar on that. But anyway, when Lisa Marie died, uh, she too had everything set up, and there was a little bit, if you saw any of this, of a perceived squabble between Priscilla and Riley, Lisa's oldest daughter. Um, but their story is that that was really more blown out of proportion by the media, that it was just getting things really cleared up for who was going to um, take on this enormous responsibility of keeping the estate going. And during Lisa's life, they had actually sold off a part of Elvis Presley Enterprises, and that was somewhat controversial. But the idea was to keep Elvis alive and to keep his legacy alive and going, that to be just in the hands of the family was pretty monumental, and to be able to take it to another level, which thus far they have, even though they demolished all those cheesy gift shops and have really nice high class stuff now. But, at least I got to enjoy it for that time period. They did. And so, when you see the music, or you see movies being made, or you even see, going back a few years, Lilo and Stitch, I mean, this is carrying on the Elvis name and legacy of music. I mean, he still is everywhere on Elvis radio, on Sirius XM. They several times a day have Elvis sightings. And what they do is they talk about in popular culture how they'll hear something, see something, refer to something. I'd be willing to bet, especially with how young our firm is, that there's a lot of Elvis references that you all don't even get, that actually relate back to Elvis. One of my favorites is our teenage daughter put up on her wall a Phoebe Bridges poster, and it's in the style, and I don't even know if she knows this, but it's after Elvis's first album, where it says Elvis in pink and then Presley in like lime green, or not lime green, but green. And so it has her name, and it's like, I wonder if she knows that this is from Elvis's first album, that's what that's after. But anyway, so they had, but they had maintained the private residence and a percentage of it. And so then Lisa dying unexpectedly like that, it's like, holy shit, who's going to take care of Graceland and make sure that this thing that has become so big continues? And so there is some discrepancies, but we know in the legal field that some things just have to be filed to get sorted out. It doesn't mean there's an actual dispute. It's kind of like when when we've filed determinations of heirship, which we have to do when there's no will, an attorney ad litem has to be appointed by the court in order to make a determination. Okay, who are the heirs? Let me find out. There's a spouse, if there were kids, all of that. What's the first thing? I think Cynthia, maybe Sam, are the only ones that are going to be able to answer this. But what's the first thing that the ad litem has to file when they're appointed?
A rejection.
A rejection. So that right there sounds adversarial, right? But it's just part of the legal process. So, and it's really just saying that they don't accept the application. They have to do their research, their job, and then they submit a report that says from their research. And most of the time, that's a very smooth sailing process. But it's just, that's how the legal channels work. But anyway, they worked through it. I didn't know until the book, Sam, that Priscilla and Lisa had such a contentious relationship.
Yeah, that was
I did
really
not know that.
interesting.
Yeah, but they worked it out, but it seems like there is a little bit of some distance with Riley and Priscilla, not from any of this. I think they both like really respect and are trying to work together this huge thing that they're taking care of. But it seems like there's not a lot of warm fuzzies there, even though there was some, I think, Vanity Fair event or something that Riley earlier this year took Priscilla to kind of show a unified front. And then just recently after the book launched, which was just last week, 2 weeks ago, they were interviewed together at Graceland. And so I watched a portion of that interview. So I think they're good. I think they're as good as they're going to be, because I don't think they're actually super close.
No, I wonder, like, the whole portion in the book of where, at least the way Lisa was phrasing it, was that like Priscilla just really was like, okay, I'm responsible responsible for you. I'm just going to kind of put you here and hope you do okay, but
Yeah.
not really be there for you. That's what
Yeah.
it kind of almost felt like.
And I think because up until this, Lisa's been very quiet.
Mhm.
I know a lot more of Priscilla's perspective, and it seemed like when Lisa was with Elvis, she got to run the whole show,
Mhm.
and that Priscilla was really struggling with being a disciplinarian and guiding
Mhm.
her and doing that. So, I mean, you could look at it both ways, but since you've gotten to listen, it's really the first part of
Mhm.
the book. Um, I know as much as is possible for the time that I have allotted in my life about Elvis. And does he just not sound like the greatest dad?
Yeah,
It's
you
so
could
sweet.
very,
No idea. She never shared any of that stuff before.
yeah. That I feel like the first half of the book was like Lisa's love letter to him,
Yeah.
where the second so far, I mean, my audiobooks minutes ran out on Spotify, so I haven't finished it. But the second half almost feels like a love letter to Lisa from Riley in
Yeah.
terms of like she's speaking up a lot more,
Yeah.
and like puts her input in it. And then there's like the whole chapter about Ben, which is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like
That is
about like
actually,
Michael and everything.
yeah, the Michael Jackson part was very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have not, so I haven't finished reading it. I'm right at where they talk about Ben.
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and that. But yeah, I didn't, you would have this perception that Elvis did not probably spend that much time with her, but it sounds like they spent a ton of time together.
Yeah. Should be like, yeah, I'm outside and I'm crashing into trees, but oh no, Elvis wants to speak to me. So I like to like sprint to him essentially. That
Yeah.
happens like, yeah, it sounded like it happened pretty frequently.
Yeah.
It was very cute. You could tell they were very, very close.
Yeah. So I thought
Yeah.
that was very sweet. But anyway, so here we are. There are
Mhm.
the twins. Oh gosh, now I think they're 14, 16 years old. Like they're around that. They're young. And so Ben, of course, took his life. So it's really just Riley who never knew Elvis, who now has this tremendous responsibility on her shoulders. And her daughter, you know what her daughter's name is? Riley's daughter.
Oh, I've heard her say it.
Wait, Sarah, did you just answer?
No, I was just gonna guess Sam.
Oh,
Oh, no. Not my name.
No, it's Tupelo.
Hmm.
Do you know why?
it's. Y'all know why?
It's a name of a place, right? Because I think they mention it in the book.
It is the name of a place in
It's
Mississippi.
Tupelo, Mississippi.
What's significant about it?
That's where he was born.
That's where he was born.
That's where Elvis was born. Anyway, so
It's cute.
good luck to Riley. She seems to have a very strong head on her shoulders, but the weight of something that hopefully Lisa
Yeah.
prepared her for, probably not. She probably never thought that she'd have that responsibility as soon as she did. But it is a tremendous amount of responsibility. So, but I think overall the story here, which is unlike the other stories we're about to share, is that probably the world's biggest superstar. I don't know if that's really been eclipsed at this point or if it ever will. That his estate was actually planned for, kept up to date, and managed fairly well. And you don't see that happen too much. But kudos to Elvis. Long live the king. All right. So who's got something else? No, don't worry. Not all the stories will be this long. In fact, they're going to be significantly shorter.
Significantly shorter.
But who wants to go next? Who's got next?
So the first one I did some research into is Heath Ledger. So he passed away in 2008. And then I realized while you were at the end of your bit, Lori, that I'm like, man, we are just going to be talking about people who have passed away. So this is kind of like a downer episode. And I was like, huh.
Isn't that what we always talk about?
Well, this time is the first time it actually like hit different. So I'm like, huh. Okay.
Well, it's all people that died before their time, you would think.
Yeah. It was just one of those like, oh man, this one has some fifis. So Heath Ledger passed away 2008, and at the time he was not married, but he did have a child, and she was very young at the time. So, one of the biggest things that we always tell our clients about is, well, is it updated? So, he had done a will back in 2003. This is prior to his child being born, prior to his relationship. And in that will, he gave everything to his parents and his sisters. And so at the time, he didn't make any provisions for a kid because he didn't have one. And then never went back, never updated it. With Heath Ledger, a couple of other things come into play that in his will, he said he was domiciled in Australia, but he had been living in New York for a couple of years because that's where he lived, that's where he worked, things like that. I wasn't able to completely ascertain whether he was in the process of any kind of naturalization to becoming like an American resident or like citizen thereafter. Um, but if you have somebody who is a foreign national, their documents say, well, no, I'm domiciled, here, that's where my family is, that's where his parents were, and that's where the people that he had named in his will lived. So we will never quite fully know a lot of the implications of how it could have played out because one thing his family did, his parents and his sisters, they were very conscious of, well, he would have wanted this to go to his daughter. He had done some other things like take out, think it was a $10 million life insurance policy, and she was the sole beneficiary, but also she was a very young child at the time. So obviously that wasn't going to just go straight to her. So his family, what they decided to do was actually disclaim the inheritance and gift it all to her. So there's also some questions about what kind of tax implications that would have had for the Ledger family if they had, received this gift, which some people were reporting at the time would have been roughly about a $20 million estate. So that was another piece that, like, there's just so many pieces of this that we'll never know what could have been because it didn't play out that way. But this is also just one of the biggest things that we come across with. We have had some clients come in that they're much older, all of their kids are now adults, but they're still like mentioning like guardians for their 40-year-old children. And then sometimes this happens, which is like, oh, y'all don't have anything, you have little ones, what's going to happen? So this was one of those where it's like, luckily, everybody was very willing to work together about it. His family said some very nice things about their of Matilda's mom, Michelle, I believe is her name. She never filed any claims on behalf of Matilda for the estate to get anything. It was just, this is one of the more rare, like, easier, happier endings where it's just like, no, this is what he would have wanted, provide for his daughter, and then from there, they'd set up everything to where it would be held for her. So that was one of the least dramatic ones, but still very, I was just like, oh,
Interesting.
his
Yeah.
family's nice.
Yeah. I guess it can happen.
Yeah.
I guess that can even happen in Australia, huh, Sam?
Yeah.
Is that hard for you to swallow?
No.
No. Is there not a rivalry between New Zealand and Australia?
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I'm kind
Listen,
of away
you
from it.
accidentally call Sam Australian, she will go off on you.
Start fighting you.
Yeah. All right. Sam, do you want to go next? Who do you have?
Yeah. Can we mute for 2 seconds so I can cough?
Yes.
I laughed and it made me want to cough. Do we want Prince or Kurt Cobain first?
Ooh, Prince.
Prince? Okay.
I vote Prince.
Okay.
Sarah, did we outvote you?
Yeah.
Well, no one
okay.
can hear you anyway today.
It's all right.
So Prince died without a will.
Uh-oh.
And as we know, he passed in 2016. And him passing away, at first they thought his estate was worth about 82 million, but then it came to 100 and 160 million, but then they finally kind of settled on 156 million. But this triggered like a 6-year legal battle, and it's still technically going on. So I guess at this point, an 8-year legal battle. But so he passed away without a will. He doesn't have any kids. His parents have passed away, so everything went to his full sister, and then like five. I think it's 5 half siblings. So they were all declared legal heir, but because when there's a whole bunch of people trying to put their hand in the pot, people like to argue. So obviously, because he didn't have a will, it started the probate process. And that's where his siblings got named legal heirs. They were unable to agree on the distribution plan, which led to him basically going to court a whole bunch of times. And then 3 of the siblings decided in 2021 to sell their shares to a company called Primary Wave. And Primary Wave acquired the rights to Prince's song catalogs, which further complicated the settlement. And then, like I mentioned before about the valuation of the estate, initially Comerica
The bank?
Comerica Bank and Trust valued the estate at 80.
And that was one of the names of his sisters.
Please. Was they valued the estate at just over 80 million, while the IRS estimated in 2020 that it's just over 160 million. So that's kind of where they kind of went down a little bit to 156 million as the final value. Everything kind of got settled, but then this year there's another court battle among the heirs. So there is a company called McMillan, Spicer, and Torres. They filed a lawsuit alleging that Sharon and Noreen, along with Brianna and Alan, breached Prince's trust. And so it kind of started it even more. I'm trying to find it. Where is it? There you go. So the McMillan and Spicer, they are the managers over this LLC that got created called the Prince Legacy LLC, which is a holding company that oversees half of Prince's estate. So the lawsuit is alleging that 4 of Prince's family members, so that's where Sharon and Noreen and then Brianna and Alan come in, that they improperly attempted to remove McMillan and Spicer from the company. And then they were trying to change the bylaws of the LLC, trying to oust McMillan and Spicer, and all this other stuff. And so that's where that's kind of coming up, is that there's another lawsuit, and they're just it's just continuous thing, and all just because he
What a mess.
didn't have estate planning in place, that 8 years later, they're still arguing about this.
That's crazy.
Especially with one of the biggest things for Prince. I don't know how much general people know about Prince, but how hard he worked to gain control of his masters. His master recordings. He finally did it in 2014. And then just to me, it's wild just to have work so hard to finally be able to have your life's work back, and then just
your siblings
it gets
just sell it off,
dinged apart again.
It's crazy.
Are there, and of course it's just conjecture, but do we know, was he close with his siblings or his family at all?
It doesn't say. I haven't seen really anything about it. But I feel like if you were close to Prince, you would know not to do that. That's just so weird to me.
Well, we've seen people do weirder things.
I mean, yeah,
fight over someone's ashes, and they're not even a celebrity. So just never know. Good one. All right, let's give Sarah a turn here, and then we'll see what we have time left for. So, Sarah, who do you have?
I think I'm gonna pick Kobe Bryant.
Okay.
I mean, I also did Matthew Perry, but Matthew Perry had his stuff together. So Kobe Bryant, he had a trust. Obviously, his wife was a beneficiary, and as he had each kid, he would update the trust to include each kid. But what ended up happening was, 6-7 months before he died, they had a newborn. So when she when he died, they had a 7-month-old, and that 7-month-old was not included in the trust. Um, so
That's a pretermitted error, by the way.
I don't know what that means. But
Heath Ledger had a pretermitted heir.
okay. So what ended up having to happen was his wife, Vanessa, had to she was a co-trustee. She had to petition to the court to modify the trust to add their youngest daughter as a beneficiary, so she would have, equal rights as her sisters. And otherwise, if the court doesn't agree, then the youngest sister is unintentionally left out from millions of dollars in inheritance. And I mean, from what I was reading, it's likely that the court will agree to modify the trust, but the amount of money and legal fees and costs that Vanessa has had to go through to fix this oversight or mistake is just a lot to go through when you're already grieving and you have a newborn, and it's complicated.
Yeah. I wonder if, and I don't know how California does this since we're not licensed there, but here we do try to include language if they feel like they're going to have more children that says that this also includes future born or adopted children to
Yeah.
avoid the pretermitted error issue. But so for all we know, it was written that way, but maybe they required something extra, or maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't written that way, and that's what one of the issues are. But that certainly is one of the differences in, at least for us, in going to a qualified law firm rather than trying to do this on your own, where we would have covered that, made sure that um, it's not such an issue, and there really is a difference in the quality of how things are drafted and thought through, and even celebrities with all their resources and money can still fail miserably at that. All right, Cynthia, who's your other one that you got?
My other one was Chester Bennington from Linkin Park.
Not Nickelback.
Not Nickelback.
No,
That
not
would be
Nickelback.
Sarah if a member from there had passed away. Okay, I think I could do this pretty quickly. So Chester Bennington, he passed away back in 2017. So his estate was about 30 million, and he had a wife, and also he had 6 kids. 2 were adopted, and the other 4 were his natural-born issues. So he actually did have a will in place, and he and his wife even had a trust in place. So the part where it gets interesting here is, so everything was left to his wife and their children, and then there were certain provisions for it. So his wife was going to be the executor for it. There was a trust established for the children, and also um, part of the trust was to make sure there's money to pay for travel. So one of his biggest things was he wanted to make sure that his children got to spend time with each other and to spend time with extended family. So that is one thing that he made sure that he made a request and funding for, to make sure that his kids would know that they would know each other, they would know extended family. So everything was going pretty smoothly then. So his wife at the time of his death was his second wife. His first wife, she actually filed suit seeking restitution for alleged child support that hadn't been paid over a span of a number of years. And so that was one of the things that started to kind of throw a little bit of a wrench into things. And then his wife they settled out of court. And so what ended up happening is, despite the fact that he wanted everything to go to the kids, his wife inherited a good bit of the assets because they were married, and he made it sure they got them. So, but they finally settled on the child support situation, because first wife withdrew that claim and instead settled for some rights to music and some merch, not everything. So she received about 50% of certain royalties, and his wife made sure it wasn't like everything, it wasn't like the new touring stuff, things going forward, but there was like a certain percentage that first wife got as part of a settlement after he passed away.
Wow.
Interesting.
So like he did have stuff in place. It was mostly just,
Yeah.
I don't know, people make sure you pay your child support.
Goodness, yeah.
So the royalties claim included a share of non-touring merchandise, publishing rights, share of master sound recordings. So
Dang.
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I think we've got time for maybe a couple more. So, Sam, who do you have?
So my other one is Kurt Cobain. So as we know, he passed away at the age of 27 from suicide in 1994.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So he did not have a will. And he was with Courtney Love at the time. I believe they were about to divorce, I believe. That's what I read, at least. I don't know a lot about their relationship, but that's what I read anyway. But so he passed in 1994. In 1997, she and former Nirvana, I cannot speak today, I'm so sorry, bandmates Dave Grohl and Christ Novoselic. I don't know if I'm saying that right. They formed an LLC basically to like manage all Nirvana related projects. A couple years later, they were going to release like this massive 45 track box set of like rare recordings of Nirvana. And Love said, no, I'm going to file a lawsuit and dissolve the LLC. She claimed that the two bandmates were sidemen. And then, of course, they countersued, and were like, no, we're going to remove you because you're incapacitated, and wanted her to have a psychic examination of her. This went on for 5 years until they finally settled it and actually released the box set. And then you'd think it'd be all over, but it's not. In 2004, Courtney allegedly discovered that the people who had been managing Kurt's estate had stolen about $30 million in cash and about $500 million in real estate holdings. So she hired lawyers and was going to sue like a whole bunch of people, but then for some reason didn't. And then because that didn't happen, she decided to go to Twitter and accuse people and all that fun stuff. Her daughter also apparently went to court for restraining order against her. That's kind of crazy. And that is when Love lost custody of her daughter, as well as control of the trust that had been funded that was through Cobain's estate for their daughter. And then, so that, again, that's what happens when you don't have a will or any estate planning. Just so much fighting. And I guess with Courtney as well, you lose daughter's relationship.
Okay, there was other reasons for that. That this isn't solely it.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I knew as soon as I mentioned that I was going to do Kurt and your reaction, I was like, I know Cynthia's going to have some.
I have thoughts and opinions. I will keep them to myself for now.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Why not share them?
This is a safe space.
No, it's not. Sam, you're leaving out who Riley married.
Who?
Riley? Or not Riley, sorry, that's his name. Who Frances married. She married Tony Hawk's son.
Oh, that's right. They just had a baby.
Whoa.
Right?
Yeah. And, I saw the babies referred to as the Gen X Messiah.
There's been like this whole thing whenever they're like, oh my gosh, Kurt Cobain's child and Tony Hawk's child.
It's just such a random pairing. Like, it's kind of great, though. But yeah,
It makes total sense how they met. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
Travel in the same
Okay.
circles, grew up in the same circles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's fair.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So Sarah, bring us home. Who do you have left?
All right. So I have Matthew Perry as
This is a
my
tough one for me.
last one. Yeah, we're coming up on a year next
Already?
week. Yeah. So Matthew had a will and a trust. And so really the only public thing we know about his assets is that he had just over $1 million in his bank account. And even though it was known that he owned several properties, I mean, obviously they weren't in his, they weren't public. There we go. Um, but essentially, he had a trust. He didn't have kids. He wasn't married. Um, and I feel like that's a common thing we hear is people say, "Oh, well, I don't have anybody to give my stuff to," or "I don't have anybody that I trust to make these decisions," or things like that. But
Right.
even though he was unmarried and didn't have kids, I mean, he named his father and his mother as beneficiaries, as well as his half sister and his ex girlfriend, which I thought was interesting. Um, but another thing I thought was interesting about his plan was that even though he didn't have kids, in it were specific instructions that any children he had would not inherit from his estate. Which I feel like what I was reading was like that's likely to avoid claims against his estate from people alleging to be
Totally.
his children, which is pretty
Yeah.
smart. But
Yeah.
I guess when you're famous, that happens. And
And
then
if you're a
Or a
dude.
similar,
man
like
whore.
Yeah.
well, I
Same
guess
thing.
yeah. Um, similar, we hear like people say like, "Oh, I don't know who to trust to take care of this." He had his business manager and a friend be the co-trustees, and his friend actually declined, so his business manager was the sole trustee. And um, yeah, I mean, very little is public. We don't know much about it other than what he had in his bank account.
Our
What I do, one last thing is I do think the name of his trust is really interesting. He named it the Alvy Singer Living Trust, which is named after Woody Allen's character in the movie Annie Hall. Never seen it, but um, yeah. All in
Really? You've
all,
never seen
he
it?
was prepared. No.
does that
I
shock
would.
you?
Well, Sarah has some very niche interests, and I figured she would have seen that one.
Aren't there some of his people that were around him either being sued or charged with possible wrongful death claims?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember whether it's civil or criminal, but are any of these people involved in that?
I don't think so. I didn't see anything about like who his beneficiaries or even his business manager. I mean, I think the person that's being questioned was his assistant.
Okay, yeah. So while Cynthia's looking up that, another interesting fact here. Does anybody know who his stepdad is? Hint,
Oh,
I mentioned him at lunch.
You've said this.
I know who it. Oh my god, I know who it is, but my brain isn't.
Listen, you also named James Brown of James Brown fame earlier at lunch, and I doubt it was him.
It's not him. It was someone I saw on a plane.
What's it start with?
Keith. It starts with Keith and ends with Morrison.
Keith Morrison.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Which I'm gonna
starts with Keith and ends with Morrison.
I'm gonna venture a guess that Sarah still doesn't know who that is.
No,
but all my true crime people who watch Dateline know who that is. So we're really hitting. If there's two shows that I've watched most in my life, it is Friends and Dateline, and that Matthew Perry and his stepdad Keith Morrison are the common denominator in that. So there you go.
Okay,
Cynthia,
so
were you going to share something? All right.
Yeah, so the 5 people that were charged in connection with the death of Matthew Perry of Friends fame are his personal assistant, a woman named the Ketamine Queen, or also known as the Ketamine Queen.
Probably not her given name.
No, not her given name.
Huh.
2 doctors.
Other than someone gave it to her.
Yes. And then, so
Wasn't that a song by ABBA?
the Ketamine Queen?
Oh, no, Dancing Queen. Never mind.
Dancing Queen. It says 5 in here, but I only see Ketamine Queen, Doctor. And there's Eric and Kenneth.
You know who should get to the bottom of that investigation? Keith Morrison.
We've come full circle.
Sort of. So really the moral of the story here is that celebrities are just like you and me, just better looking with a lot more money. Thanks for listening. And just to cover all our bases about what you just heard, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And tell your friends about us. We do webinars and live events. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer, or maybe you just want to say hi, hit the link in the show notes or go to burch-law.com/podcast and fill out the contact form.
Much better.
Yeah, I thought that had a lot of energy.